What's up, everybody? This is Marv B, and you are listening to another episode of the Man Listen Show. We have a very good show for you today. And before we get started with that, we're going to go ahead and hear a little bit from our advertisement. The Man Listen Show is brought to you by the new album from Tony Emeralds, Retro, raw elements that radiate originality. You can find this album on all of your favorite streaming applications. Retro, raw elements that radiate originality by Tony Emeralds. Don't forget to put the Z on Emeralds. Are you having a hard time keeping up with your New Year's resolutions? Do you need to find a fun way to work out? Well, if you're in the St. Louis area, please contact the Title Boxing Club in Rock Hill. The Title Boxing Club offers explosive total body boxing and kickboxing fitness workouts that help women and men of all fitness levels burn up to 1,000 calories per hour in group classes. These group fitness classes capitalize on the training of professional boxers, kickboxers, and mixed martial artists. Members can join others in these group fitness classes led by pros that target the whole body. If you're looking for a fitness club that offers effective group exercise classes and personal training, we are the club for you. Contact us today on Facebook to get started. That's the Title Boxing Club in Rock Hill. The Man Listen Show is also brought to you by Conversate With Us Radio. Conversate With Us Radio, your urban radio show podcast. A fun place to look for advice and a different perspective on life, love, relationships, sports, and politics. One conversation at a time. You can find us on Facebook at Conversate With Us Radio and on Instagram at Conversate With Us. Don't forget to capitalize the V in Conversate. Okay, we're back. We're back. Like we said before, another great show that we have for you today. I have with me today my normal part of my normal crew. We have Arika. Arika, how are you doing?
I'm good.
Good, good, good. And tonight we have a special guest. We have a good friend of mine, a good brother of mine, an fellow alpha man, Councilman Terry Wilson. Terry, how you doing, brother?
I'm good, Marv. How you feeling, man? How you doing, Aretha? Appreciate you all having me on the show today.
We're doing good, doing good, doing good. So,
Welcome.
so Terry, tell us a little bit about yourself, man. Tell us about the position that you hold with the city of Jennings and how you are involved in the community, the local community that you represent.
Very good. Well, I was elected the city council in 2017. It's a 2-year term, so I'm up for re-election this year. I'm unopposed, so that's a good thing. I've been involved with the community pretty much ever since I graduated and came back to St. Louis, and it pretty much started with my mom. My mom has been involved with local politics in Jennings. I've been living in Jennings all my life. I've been in Jennings since '84, and back when I was younger, the political landscape didn't quite look like how it looks now. And I learned a lot in college, being on the SGA, being in leadership in the fraternity, and basically just took those skills that I got from those experiences and brought it back to St. Louis. I work for a nonprofit organization called Beyond Housing. I'm the director of our community center, and our community center really addresses a lot of issues as it relates to poverty, homelessness, job readiness, after-school programming for the youth. And I'm also on the Jennings School Board as well. And I just like to note that, we just got our AYP scores back from the state, and we're doing very well, especially considering the dark cloud over urban school districts. And so That's just pretty much where I am right now.
Well, I mean, I would expect nothing less from a fellow alpha man, but I wanted the listeners to know your background, a little bit about you, and the perspective you bring to this discussion that we're having tonight. And that discussion is about gun violence in the black community. I'm a big person on I refrain, I abhor, I detest the what about black on black crime.
Yeah,
I think the phrase "black on black crime" is a misnomer. I think people do crime where they live at and towards the people that they live by,
absolutely.
and I think that the framing of the discussion of crime in our community has been done in an incorrect way for too long.
Yeah,
With that being said, I do think there is some personal accountability and some measures that we need to take as a community to help overcome some of the factors that have created this situation that we find ourselves in. And I wanted to do this show for a long time because I think like most black people, American DOS, gun violence has affected my family directly. I lost a nephew,
mm-hmm.
my brother's son, to gun violence. Here recently, I had a young cousin in Kansas City, Missouri, who was an innocent bystander and shot. She was shot a couple times while just at the grocery store, a young child. And I wanted to talk about this for a while, but I want to make sure that we frame this in a way that we can bring solutions to the community and bring awareness as to why this is happening to us and what we
Yeah.
can take as normal people, dated people in the community, trying to do our best to make a change with this. So, in your capacity, Terry, man, what have you seen, man, that in terms of the factors that contribute towards gun violence in the black community?
So first off, I kind of, when I got the phone call from you, I kind of reflected on our murder count here in St. Louis, and I was just kind of looking at the trends from when, we had, Missouri has always been a kind of loose state in terms of gun laws, and I was just looking at the trend, and I noticed all the way back in 2015 and 2016, the murder count was like 188 in St. Louis, and in 2017, it rose to 205. And 2017 is around the time the open carry law went into effect in Missouri. So, in terms of you know access to guns, that's always been accessible to folks in our community, period. But I just thought, it was interesting to see the numbers move when the gun laws have gotten even looser. Because right now, we're an open carry state, stand your ground state. And in 2017, it was 205. 2018, it was 187. And right now, we're on pace to shatter that number because right now we're sitting at 20 murders right now in 2019, and we're just now starting February. So, with that being said, I think a lot of it has to do with our laws that are on the book and how we regulate guns and accessibility. I was driving down the street 2 weeks ago, and I noticed a sign. It's the same sign that comes twice a year. It says gun show, and the gun show is in rural outside of St. Louis, but it's advertised, in the inner city. This gun show, and I don't know if you've been to one before, but I've been to a few myself, and it's very easy to get a gun if you got the money. I think that's one issue right there. Also, I think I think it's a lack of self empowerment in our community. We've gotten away as a community from loving each other. I think that's lack of knowledge of self as well. I don't think a lot of the youth coming up now really have self pride in themselves. And when you don't love yourself, man, I mean you do anything to anybody.
The thing that I've noticed is that our young people and their approach and value of life is much different. And Arik, I'm gonna bring you in a second, but what I noticed, and I made a point. I wrote an article about this. There was a movie that came out straight out of Compton. It was about it
Mhm.
was a biopic or biopic or however you say it of the group NWA. And I remember the effect the music that NWA put out on me as a young black man in terms of my perception of black women towards other black men. And I was a suburb kid,
Yeah,
and I had a strong black family structure. I had people I knew right from wrong. So it was a form of entertainment, but it still somewhat affected me in my approach to how I looked at and treated people that looked like me. Now I had
right.
something to counterbalance that. Being a kid that grew up in this, that moved to the suburbs, that had parents who were able to provide me stability, but I often wonder with the images that we see on TV, we hear in the music, how much of a part does that play? In addition to systemic racism and all the other factors that create an environment that cause people to act in this way. I mean, Arika, I know you're involved with the legal system, so oftentimes you're encountering young people that are on the wrong side of the law when when it's crunch time. Either they're about to do some time or they're trying to keep from doing time. Have you seen any patterns with the young people who are caught up in this cycle?
It's almost as if there's this ignorance of consequences. It's like they follow these influencers, whoever it may be, the rappers, the people in their neighborhood, gangs, or just people who are around them. And they follow these influencers or these people that they idolize, like, major drug crime lords and all these people. And when they get there to sentencing, they're totally amazed that they could do years. They're like, like this never occurred to them that taking someone's life would result in having to go to jail. And they're like, well, this is the first time I've done something. No, this is the first time you've been caught. And they
Right.
know that. And even still, you're expecting some level of leniency because you haven't been caught doing anything before, but you have like 5 pending charges. And so I think that the people that they allow, that these children are allowing themselves to be influenced by, what, rightly or wrongly, I mean, obviously we should have more mentors in the community, but because we have so many children looking up to people who are pretending to be something that they're not on TV, the people who are maybe glorifying things that they have or have not done in the neighborhoods, either way, they're being influenced and they're making decisions that are not fully supported by reality. It's like they don't understand probably the consequences internally and externally of taking a life, of committing one crime, leading you down the pathway of committing another crime. Sometimes it's like once you get into the life of dealing drugs, it's hard to get out. I know someone personally who tried to get out several times, but they had so many people around them who are like, "Oh no, I'm used to you having fast money. What happened to us being able to go to the movies? Or how come you don't have a new J's? You used to be dressed fresh." And it's very hard for someone who doesn't have any strong reinforcement in their lives to overcome that kind of negative influence. People trying to perpetually send them back into that life because it's a fast life, they're getting fringe benefits, or there's some type of incentive for them to encourage people to keep going the wrong way, or maybe that's all that they know. Similar to, young females perpetuating the images that they see on the TVs that attract the attention of the rappers and the ball players and stuff. I think that it all ties hand in hand. I would say it's number one, the influencer, number two, the hopelessness in the community that's kind of widespread, and with that combination, it's just a very negative result.
I think she touched on a very, very interesting point when she talked about them living in a kind of like a false reality, and their reality doesn't show consequences. And then when they get to that point, like you said, it's like a wow moment, but it's like they're trying to live up to something in this world that's not realistic. Everybody is doing everything for social media or TV, or everybody just want to be famous. Everybody want to go viral, and I think that plays a big role in this reality that we're living in right now.
And that's why I harp on the images that we allow our children to see, and us making sure that we're able to guide them through that, because you're not going to be able to keep them from seeing everything that's on the airwaves, right? Kids got iPads, they
Right.
got cell phones at early ages, so you can try as much as you want to keep them from seeing the negative imagery, but your best bet, and the approach that I always took as a parent, was let me go ahead and expose you to this so that I can explain to you what's entertainment and what is not.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to play Grand Theft Auto and you're running around shooting at police and robbing people on the street, you do know that if you pull a gun on somebody, they don't come back. And not only
Right.
have you ruined their life, but you ruin the lives of their family, and you ruin the life of your family who mourn you because you're gone, and you more than likely will not be coming back. So that role that I play as a father and as a parent, to expose them to that, so that as they get, so they're not a person who gets older and he gets exposed to it and says, oh wow, this is the bad boy and the bad girl imagery, I want to be that. And say, hey, no, this is what it is. These are the pitfalls. Now if you decide to go ahead and go that route, hey, that's on you, but you can't say that you weren't told to do better. You weren't told how to avoid those pitfalls. And I think that that lack of black family structure goes
Mm-hmm.
back to the social and economic engineering that was directed towards our communities.
Yeah.
We often talk about it. And Terry, to let you know, we led in the year. We said we're not going to blame black people for what systemic racism did to us. Now, there is some personal accountability for us, right? But we have to
Right.
talk about what created the environment that makes it to where these children, these young people are hopeless. Where is the
Yeah.
desperation coming from? And we know that it comes from mass incarceration, taking the men out of the homes, redlining, segregation, creating slums, creating neighborhoods that are under resourced, schools that are under resourced. You talked about the test scores for your school district, Terry, and I'm proud of you, man, for the work that you do. But there's too many of our young people they don't have anybody investing in their education, and education being a way for them to get out of the environment that they are in. So, I mean, you being on the front lines, Terry, and being boots on the ground, what are you seeing people in the community doing to help these young people not be hopeless?
So that's a very good question. So I know one thing in our district, and I'm using our district as an example. Well, it's many things, but I know in our district, one thing that we started about 5 years ago is really promoting pride in our community. And so that might sound real small when you're thinking about changing education, but promoting pride within the building, making sure the building is clean, making sure the building has positive images and quotes all around the school, doing convocations in the beginning of the school year with not just the teachers but the custodians, the security guards, like just involving everybody in the whole process of rallying around each other and really building community. And I think we kind of forget to do that when we get so caught up in the world of academia. We kind of forget those foundational things that create success in your community. And it starts with pride, and it starts with a simple cleanup of an area. Man, if you walking in a community and you see trash all over the area and busted out windows, I mean that's a mindset thing. So it creates a mindset of hopelessness when you see that. And I think we really started there, but then we also addressed the issues that aren't really being addressed, such as the health issues, the mental health issues. You have to really address those. And I think in the Black community, we kind of shy away from mental health. It's almost one of those things that we kind of shy away from. Like, oh no, I don't need counseling. I don't need to talk this out, or seek a professional to really get an understanding of what's going on in my mind, or what's going on in my household. And I think not forgetting those small things and build up on that. I think that's where we ought to start in a lot of cases, man. Just those small things first. We can come up with all the programs we want, but at the end of the day, if we still not addressing those key issues and helping aid those, man, we're going to continue to have the same problem. Because I just see the community just putting a lot of band-aids on things, and you got to take it on head first to actually solve it. You know what I mean?
So let me ask you this, and I'll go to Erika first. We said that there needs to be some accountability on our part, right?
right.
But how much of this goes to law enforcement and how they handle the crime in our community? I mean, to break it down for everybody, I used to live in St. Louis. Currently, Erika and Terry live in the St. Louis area. St. Louis is comprised of St. Louis City, and then you have it's a bunch of small municipalities that make up the county. So you
Mm-hmm.
literally can drive 3 blocks and go through one or two small municipalities, each with their own police force, each with their own mayor. So St. Louis made the news. So when St. Louis made the news with the Mike Brown killing, and they talked about Ferguson, Missouri, that really was the St. Louis area.
Mm-hmm.
So we saw the response
Yeah.
to the protesters that came out, who were upset, rightfully so, at how the murder of Mike Brown was handled, and we saw the police force come out with military grade equipment and weaponry to quell the protesters. But we see the statistics in most of our major metropolitan cities where violence is spiraling out of control, and the detectives who are in charge of clearing the murders, they are under resourced. So there's a fine line of asking, okay, we need police to be able to help solve these crimes, but not. We don't want to give them too many resources because there's no control once they get it, and they might just buy more equipment that's used to oppress us when we decide to protest what happens to us. So, Rick, I talked a while with asking that question, but what do you think? What do you think the role of police should be, law enforcement should be in handling this topic?
I think that's a complex question. I think that one of the main problems with the police is, and with all of these municipalities, is oversight. It's very hard for anyone to keep an eye on 80 different municipalities. And so when you have 80 different police forces and judges, prosecutors, clerks, whoever, it's hard for, you know, us to make sure that those agencies are operating as they should. Especially like when you have places like Ferguson, prior to the investigation, not allowing people bring their children to court. When court's at 6 o'clock at night, daycares close at 6, so where are your children supposed to go? But without that oversight, I think that the police have been put, like you said, in a hard position. On the one hand, they're under resourced, but on the other hand, the few agencies that do have the resources have abused them. And it seems that some of the resources that they were acquiring didn't seem necessary or appropriate for policing a municipality. So if you're getting resources that will help you with detaining or investigating crimes, that's one thing. But if you're getting gas masks and tear gas bombs and things like that, it's kind of hard to justify why you think you need that for a 3 block radius municipality. Like, are you expecting a war to break out?
Yeah,
And I
that's
think that
that's
goes back
that's
to,
not
go ahead.
policing. That's not policing. That's riot suppression. That's how we're going to keep the I almost said the word that's forbidden on this show, but it's how we going to keep the blacks in line if they decide they've had enough. Because what most people don't know, and what came out with the Obama administration and Attorney General Holder, a lot of these municipalities, their cash cow was black people.
Yeah.
And when we talk about the racial wealth gap, we talk about I always, when I first started going to St. Louis before I moved there for a few years, I always wondered why the people from St. Louis were so paranoid just moving around their city. Don't go here.
Mm.
Slow down. Make sure you slow down. Make sure you got your seatbelt on. And it
Yeah.
wasn't until you leave that situation that you realize that it is definitely a police state and they are targeting black people. But it does not seem that the perpetrators of the crimes that help contribute to the downtroddenness of the community are really pursued like the people who are just trying to be good citizens and trying to make it day by day. So, I mean, I'm sorry I cut you off, Erika, but I just wanted to talk about that. Why it's so important for us to have that oversight that you mentioned when dealing with the police.
Yeah, it's definitely a different vibe here in St. Louis that residents know what areas you need to slow down in. We know areas like St. Anne are over policed. They have all brand new cars. They're out here arresting people in Woodland Terrace or Jennings, wherever they want to go. They're going to ride around and arrest people like they have jurisdiction everywhere. Not to pick on them, but to pick on them. But
Yeah, call them out. Yeah.
Right.
right, them in particular. But then when you have places like, and I pick on Pine Lawn a lot, no offense to Pine Lawn, but my experience with them was very troubling. Their police station looks like a crack house. I was afraid to go there. I had to go get somebody out of jail at night. There's no police officers there. You have to pick up the phone outside, stand outside by yourself on the corner of this crack house, and call and ask for an officer to be dispatched to the jail.
Yeah.
And then someone comes out there and meets you and they let you in, and the jail is like a dog cage. It doesn't even go all the way to the ceiling. And it's just like standing room only. And then there's like a desk next to it. And I'm like, what is the purpose of this building, of this? Why is it so important for this municipality to stay operational if it's obviously barely functioning?
And it was really getting out of hand pre Mike Brown, pre Ferguson, because that situation kind of shedded light on how these municipalities were making money on the backs of black people. Man, it was getting so bad that, and they were making tons of money before Senate Bill 5 passed, limiting income from fines, from court fees and stuff like that. But they literally, Marv, had cameras set up on cars that didn't have police officers in them. They had like these special gadgets to catch you running red lights, speeding, and a lot of those radars were off, man. I mean, people were. It got real bad. And I know you mentioned Pine Line. The mayor of Pine Line. Pine Line is very small, mind you. But Pine Line's mayor, before he got indicted and did some time in the feds, he convinced the council to make him a full-time mayor. Most of the mayors in these small municipalities are part-time. So he convinced them to make him a full-time mayor. But they was making so much money, they were able to fund his salary. Who was making probably like $60,000 to $70,000 in a city that had under 1,000. Jennings, where I serve, we have about 17,000 residents, and our mayor didn't make half of what he was making, but all of those salaries were being funded by light cameras and those car cameras, and I mean it was ridiculous. Like I said before, Mike Brown and the Ferguson situation. I mean, it had gotten out of control. It was ridiculous, man. And I know you can speak to that, being in the legal field. I mean, it was open season, man, in terms of the tickets and the fees and court costs, and it was just out of control.
So let's bring it back full circle to what the main topic of the discussion is. All of that contributes to the wealth gap. I mean,
Yeah.
you can't get ahead if you have a police state targeting you, the ridiculous fines, the obstacles put in front of you just so you can have your driver's license, so you can get to work. What if you get caught up on a bogus crime, or they pulled you over and then you miss time from work, you get fired from work, and then now you're jobless. Now you don't have any money coming in, and it's just another example of how systemic racism has contributed to this depressed economic condition that many Black Americans, American DOS, are living in a lot of the cities across the United States. I mean, I don't travel internationally a lot, but I do travel across this country a lot. And my wife always laughs. Me and my boy, my best friend, we always, when we go somewhere, we always say, "Take me to the hood," because I want to see how black people are living. And I'm gonna tell you this:
Yeah.
the north side of Omaha, the east side of Topeka, south side, west side of Chicago, North County, and St. Louis, they all look the same.
Yeah.
Memphis 10, Orange Mountain, they all look the same. And it just lets you know that it is not by mistake. It is not random. It is intentional. And knowing that this game has been rigged to create this situation, I think we have to come up with some solutions to how we can help our young people navigate this and not become so hopeless, so depraved that they turn on one another. Thinking about that, Terry, what do you think is something that we can do as Black people who care about our community, care about the upliftment and the empowerment of the Black community? What can we do as citizens who care to help change the course of how our communities are going in terms of gun violence?
So we definitely have to be proactive with our young people early on. So it starts at home. It starts in our community, and I think we kind of hit on it, early on in the show. Just really being accountable to each other. We don't look after each other anymore. And then also another issue that hasn't been touched on is the economics in our community. I mean, job creation, job training that lead to employment. I mean, just think about this, man. I mean, how many people that wake up every morning that has a job to go to, that they can pay to feed their family? They're going to be thinking about guns at that time. You know what I'm saying? Like, we don't have any jobs really in our community geared towards, the people that actually live there. So I think really being proactive early on with our youth and actually having true rehab in our jail system too. I think we're creating monsters in our jail system. People going in and coming out worse than they were when they went in. I think we need to definitely address those issues as well. I don't think it's one silver bullet, but I think we need to start, in those bushes without getting into the weeds, Barry.
I'm gonna pardon you for that pun, silver bullet. We talking about gun violence, and you talking about a silver bullet. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, Arika. I mean, what do you think? I mean, what type of solutions would you like to see put forward to try to help change this narrative and this reality for a lot of Black Americans?
Well, I think that Terry, you touched on one important thing that I preach a little bit, and that's with the jail system. When I saw 13 and I read the new Jim Crow by
13,
Michelle Alexander, I was like,
13 was
mm-hmm.
a documentary produced by Ava DuVernay on Netflix. We suggest everybody watch it. I'm just giving people some background so they know what you're talking about. Go ahead, Arika. I'm sorry.
Right, and that documentary was based on the new Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander. And what she basically talks about is how, among other things, after people go to jail and get out, there are so many roadblocks to them re-entering society. Once you have that felony, it's 1,000 times harder to get a job. If you can't get a job, you're 90% more likely to go back to the crime that got you in jail in the first place, because there's nothing else you can do to support yourself. It's like, or go back to crime because we're not going to offer you a job. aside from the jail system, I think that one of the main reasons, going back to systemic racism, that our government is fighting the raise is in the minimum wage is because they know that that's going to be disproportionately helpful to our people. Because our people don't have the mommy and daddy safety net that a lot of these other so-called racists have. What we don't have is somebody who can, help us out when we stumble. If you don't have $20 for gas and get to work, you got to overdraw your account. That's $55. Now you got a deficit when payday come, and so on and so on. Whereas maybe some of these other people can ask mom and daddy. Well, if you raise that minimum wage, and now we have, let's say, two people in the house making $15, $16 an hour, that's going to dramatically change the financial scope of a lot of people's lives. And so, like you were saying earlier, how these people who do have jobs get up and they have to think about guns. How many of these people get up and go to work every day and know for a fact they're not going to have enough money to support their families? And so you have these kids watching their parents work 2, 3 jobs. My mom had 3 jobs when I was a kid, and we struggled. And I grew up watching that, and I took the path of, I don't want to do that. Let me go to school so I can work one job, even though I still have a lot of jobs. So I don't know how that worked out. But you have these kids, and on the other hand, go the other route, and they say, well, why should I work that hard, still struggle, when I see these rappers, these basketball players, these drug dealers not working and balling and living, doing way more things than my parents and my family are able to do. When you start putting jobs in place that enable our people to start having better lives, to do more things with their children, that takes away some of the glory out of the underworld, out of the criminal life and all that stuff. So when you actually see your parents working hard and you see them being able to save money and go on vacations and do stuff like normal people, then you're like, okay, this is how life should be. But when you see them working 2 and 3 jobs just to put food on the table, and there's no real benefit other than just surviving day to day, it's really hard to motivate them to go follow in their footsteps.
Yeah.
And so I think that needs to definitely be addressed.
Yeah, I agree, and I think to both of your points, criminal justice reform, we need to do it in a smart way. It's not all about the black people who have been locked up, because we haven't all been locked up, and I hate it when the first thing they say for black people, American DOS, is we want to do criminal justice reform. Let's do it in a smart way so that we actually get the justice that we need, the policing that we need, not over policing, not a police force that is basically used to terrorize our communities. I think that, to your point, when you talk about a livable wage, we also have to really focus on education as well. I believe that immigration is a big piece in how we're going to address the wages. I think that immigration plays a part in that, especially for black communities. But I also think that when you look at technology and how it advances in automation, we have to educate our children to be prepared to do the STEM, work on the computers, work on the programming, and that's the way. Because the jobs that we used to have, in terms of mom and dad working at a factory, or working a blue collar job and making a livable wage, that's gone. And I don't think that's going to be available for our children. And not everybody's going to be able to just be a lawyer like Erika, be a councilman like Terry, be a doctor. We need people who are able to make things go, and that goes to the engineering, computer, electrical, and things of that nature. And I also believe that with that livable wage, just 1 second, with that livable wage, what happens is the parents, to your point, Erika, they're able to spend more time with the children, and the lack of supervision that happens while mom and dad is working their behind off just to provide a living, not to achieve the American dream, but just to have a living. There's so much that can fall through the cracks when you have children who have to go unsupervised, latchkey kid who's basically parenting themselves while mom and dad is trying to provide for them. that livable wage will help decrease that opportunity they have to get with the wrong crowd. So you both make excellent points in terms of how we're going to address this in a way that it attacks the root of the problem, not just the symptoms that we see. It attacks the root of the problem. But before we wrap it up, I'll give each of you a final word. Terry, go ahead.
First off, I'd like to thank you all for inviting me on the show today. I think it's real good, healthy discussion. I think this is a discussion that needs to be had, and I think as an elected official, a pastor, a leader of nonprofit organizations, first and foremost, addressing violence and gun violence in particular in our community should be top priority moving forward. I know we talk about a lot of other things, but I think that needs to be top priority, addressing that issue, because we create, other issues by not addressing those key issues. But I just want to thank you again. Enjoyed the conversation and look forward to coming back some other time.
Appreciate you, man. Arika?
I think that we definitely need to keep having these conversations, because the more of these conversations we have, the more ideas we can get that, like you said, go more to the root and less to the symptoms. I think we've had too many years discussing the symptoms of what's going wrong in our communities without getting to the root. And I think in addition to what you were saying about how when things fall through the cracks while parents are gone all the time working 2 and 3 jobs, I think another thing that those kids miss out on is the sporting or extracurricular activities that some of these other kids are able to have. I think about my kids, and they have soccer and gymnastics and cheer and basketball, and it's nothing to them to say, hey, I want to sign up for this, or I want to do intramural this. And we're talking about scholarships and what college they're going to go to based off of that. That takes away from the hopelessness. That gives them something that they're working on, a skill that they have. Then they're exposed to other people, coaches who are giving them, that kind of tough love outside of sometimes parents are too soft on you. And I think that's something that kids need too. Learning how to work well with others, being a part of a team, having some responsibility where your team depends on you and you depend on them. I think that's important for children growing up, and that's something else that our children miss out on too often.
Yeah, I agree. To wrap it up, I wanna talk about a topic that's sensitive to all three of us that's on the show today. I talked about the motivation behind this show, and recently, a fraternity brother of Terry and I, and family member of Arika, lost his life to gun violence, and I want to make sure that we give a shout out to the memorial fund that was put into place for his family. So for those of you who want to donate to a awesome man, an awesome brother in the community who lost his life senselessly to gun violence, go to www.gofundme.com/Demetrius Demetrius Stewart Memorial Scholarship, and donate what you can to honor a great man in the St. Louis community. I wanted to make sure that I said that. But as a final word, I want to make sure that I put this challenge out and encourage all of our brothers to take the time to go and talk to a young person, a young man that is outside of your direct circle. Too many of us, we achieve some success. We're able to move to the suburbs, and our kids are given the opportunities that we talked about most kids should have. And we think that by just, hey, I volunteer with kids, but really you just with your kid and their friends, and they have all the opportunities that you have worked hard to give to them. But the children that need that mentoring and that influence that you have aren't in that circle, and they're living a day-to-day life where they are struggling with the hopelessness and the depression that the environment that they're in brings to them. So your influence, your ability to mentor and show them a different way means a lot. My former pastor in Houston always used to say, you don't go fishing in a fish tank. So you need to go out to where they're at, go into the ocean, go into the rough waters, and try to save those souls and to be an impact on the lives of our young people who are fighting day to day just to make it. So, a good friend of mine, uh, Frank Kurtdahl, he talked about approaching the children, being on their level, showing them love. And we got to focus on the love. We got to show them that it's okay to love your brother, love a black man, love a black woman. And it's okay to give them tough love, but don't forget to have the love when you talk to them. My father, Marvin Sr., he always talked about there's plenty of men in the penitentiary that are sitting there thinking, I wish I'd have just took that ass whipping instead of pulling that gun. And we need to give those type of those pearls of wisdom to these young men and to show them it's okay to love your brother. Manhood is not about pulling the gun. Sometimes you're going to get in a fight and you're going to lose. And you pick yourself up, you dust yourself off, and you just keep going. And we got to be able to do that. And it's on us to take those steps and to be in the community, be on the front line to help one another. So with that being said, I want to thank Councilman Terry Wilson for being on the show. Appreciate you, bruh. Rika, I thank you so much for being my sister and being a part of the show. Next time we'll have our normal crew back. We'll have C and Lav with us. Big shout out to them. Make sure you follow us on Facebook. Make sure you follow us on Twitter. You can follow us on Instagram as well. Man Listen Show. You can also subscribe to the show on YouTube and iTunes, Google Play, and SoundCloud. So make sure you go to those platforms, like, subscribe, and we'll catch you next time. Peace.
Bye.
Be left.